Hey, this is Reverend Reagan, and I am back to talk about winter Vibram FiveFingers. In my last video, we talked about all the different casual five fingers that I have and that have been out for the last 10 years or so, from kangaroo leather to wool to hemp, shoes you can just kind of wear around for everyday use. Today, I want to talk about winter. I am in the Midwest and it is cold here. And so I want to kind of show you what I wear in the winter, what they have made in the past, and kind of changed up to right now. So I'm going to start with the first winter Vibrams I ever got, and they are they're called Lontras, and these were out several years ago. You'll be able to tell I've used these a lot. So here's the thing about these Lontras. These were made for not just for winter wearing, but for winter running. And so these are shoes that are made with a water-resistant upper, taped seams to keep water out as well. And then they had this kind of higher neoprene cuff that would keep out the snow and cold, as well as a lining on the inside that would keep your feet warm. These have the same Trek sole that a lot of the casual older Vibrams had that was used for trails and those kinds of things. So let me tell you about my experience with these Lontras. These were the first ones I ever got for running in the winter, and they are probably the warmest Vibrams I've ever had, including the newest versions. They are warm enough that your feet would sweat when wearing these out in the cold, and especially if you're running and doing active things. And so they were great for that. Now, the downside was they were incredibly stiff, and I don't mean the sole, I mean the upper. And so for me, these were not comfortable. My wife had a pair, her feet slid in them, fit perfectly, she still wears them, they were great. For me, it took a lot of time for my feet to kind of get used to how stiff the toes were and the extra taped seams were. So I would often really kind of, my feet would hurt, my toes would hurt after using these to run in. So I never really loved them in terms of the comfort of them, but they served their purpose. They kept your feet warm, you could run well in them, I did many winter 20-mile training runs in these shoes in order to prepare for races. They're also kind of weird looking. I mean, tennis shoe, running shoe, I guess, looking. They're fine, but not something I ever really wanted to wear around, even though they were the only warm shoes that I had. The other negative is they did have a tendency to start kind of to come apart over time, and they came apart in certain areas, and I'll show this here. Where this strap comes, they would come apart, and you can see I have some shoe goo there from gluing it, and then that would become a place where water could get in. And so that was always, that didn't happen quickly, but it did happen. And then eventually, as with all of my Vibrams, you begin to wear holes in the side of the toes, and you begin to get moisture in that way. So I don't use these much anymore, mainly for that issue, because I know that my feet are going to get wet if there's any snow on the ground, because there's some holes that I've worn in. But again, these probably have a couple 100 miles of running on them, and I've had them for, I don't know, 8 years, 7 years, something like that. So can't really complain. They came out with a second version of these a few years later. I don't have them, but I have a friend that does. They did not have this extra cuff. They were a lower shoe, and my friend loves his. In fact, he still wears them. He never felt like they were as uncomfortable as I felt like these were, and kept his feet warm on runs. And so I wish those might have stayed around, or I wish that Vibram would continue to evolve these taped seams, water-resistant shoes, because they're really not doing anything like that right now. And that's the biggest need for us in winter, is when it's wet and cold and snowy. I don't want to put on regular shoes just because it's winter. I want to wear what I love, and I would like to have more kinds like this. Now, Vibram also did come out at one point with a waterproof shoe that was not lined, not warm, but waterproof, had a waterproof membrane. And I had a pair of those. In fact, I had two pairs because they had a tendency, after wearing them a few times, they would start to pull apart on the upper. And I felt like that was a fatal flaw of those shoes. And so they were really never much use, and they didn't last very long. So I'm assuming Vibram figured out that it wasn't a great design. Okay, the second ones I want to show you are the Trek Ascent Insulated. These are came out a couple years ago, and similar to the Trek Ascent LR I showed in my previous video that are made of kangaroo leather and hemp, based on the same Trek Ascent basic model, which is a hiking trail shoe that I ran my first 100-miler in. These are the Trek Ascent Insulated. And these are a nice insulated shoe, and you can tell it's got thickness on the inside of insulation. It has that Trek Ascent sole that is great for trails and snow and whatever else you might encounter when you're out walking around or running. These are made of, it almost feels like a pair of gloves you might have with your coat. Not particularly waterproof. In fact, they're not really at all waterproof. I tried when I first got these, sprayed them down with a waterproofer, boot waterproofing spray, and tried to get that everywhere. It didn't really make much difference. These will let water in if you're in it, and they're okay with snow at first, but they'll eventually let the water in as well. These are a higher, kind of a higher ankle as well. And I've had these a couple years. These are what I run in on the coldest days now. And they're okay. They are not as warm as the Lontras. I feel like I've worn these more casually, and they're warmer than a regular Vibram, but not nearly as warm as I'd hoped they would be. Now, that's understanding when we're talking about these. I mean, we are dealing with the difference between wearing gloves or mittens. You don't have the body heat of having all your toes together with your foot to keep it warm. So you have to just kind of recognize that's going to be an issue. I always wear socks in Gingy or some other no-name brand socks. And still, these just aren't very warm. They get cold much faster than I was hoping. But this is what I wear if I'm running today. Now, this year, and just recently, the last couple months, Vibram released a newer version of insulated toe shoes, Five Fingers, and they are called the V-Trek Insulated. And I just got a pair of these about 2 weeks ago, and primarily I got these because I don't love black shoes in general. I'm a gray guy, and I like that better. And when I saw these, they make some great gray color of these for women, but not for men. And when I saw the new V-Trek Insulated coming out, supposedly they were a little bit better insulated, as well as having some taped toes. And so I was hopeful that maybe these would be a little bit better than the V-Trek Insulated. And thankfully, I was right. Now, these have that same sole as the Trek Ascent. It's now the V-Trek sole, and I think, and this you can see up close, you can see kind of the sparkles in this. Vibram has a really good winter rubber that they use, and I think this has that newer winter rubber. You'll have to go to their website and check on that to be sure. But these V-Trek Insulated are, they have a little extra lining. They have some nice fleece on the inside of these shoes, and I will say they are definitely warmer, at least in my opinion, than the Trek Ascent Insulated. They feel warmer. They're similar in comfort, but definitely I enjoy wearing them much more. The other thing that's nice is they did tape around the toes, with kind of a rubbery material, and that does, at least for me so far, it seems like it has helped keep the snow and ice out of my shoes and kept my toes from getting wet when we've been out around in the slushy snow. And so I'm hopeful that will hold up. I'm tempted to spray these down with some waterproofer as well, but I haven't gotten around to doing that yet, because the material that they use is still real similar to this Trek Ascent material. It's not waterproof at all. Now, I would prefer something like this with some kind of taped water-resistant material. I think if they could pull that off, it would make for a great winter shoe. But I'm not complaining. I feel like they've made the most progress this year on getting us something that we can wear in the winter. And I like the look of it. I'm never an orange fan, but I like the gray and the black, and they work out well. Now, disclaimer on these. I said in my last video, I'm a size 43 across the board, almost completely. These are the exceptions. These Insulated, the Trek Ascent Insulated, and the V-Trek Insulated are both shoes that I sized up to a 44. And Vibram does tell you to do that on their website. I encourage you to do that. It feels a little weird because the toes feel a little bit long, but I started with a 43 when I bought these, and they were much too tight. That insulation just closes in on your feet, and you need something a little better. So get a size up when you purchase these, but I would say I'm pretty happy with the new V-Trek Insulated, and I'm hopeful they'll last really well. They're pricey like all of their shoes, and so you have to always kind of figure out what it's worth to you. But anyway, those are ones I really like. Now I have a bonus for you. There was a sale last year on something else that Vibram makes called the Furoshiki, and probably if you're watching this, you know what these are. But the Furoshiki are, I believe, Japanese-inspired style of minimal shoe that Vibram came out with a few years ago. And I ordered some neoprene Furoshiki boots. And I got these thinking, okay, if I really need to go in the snow, these will be a little warmer, and they will be water resistant. They'll keep my feet warm. And they wrap the sole around. You don't tie anything. You wrap it all up, and it ends up looking kind of like this. So I'll just give you a quick overview of how I feel about these. They're okay. Yeah, they're a little bit warmer, but it's really just straight neoprene. There's no real insulation, so they're not super warm. You don't have the place in the toes for water to come in, but you feel like the way these overlap, they're not really sealed up either. And so I never feel certain that they're going to keep my feet warm and dry. They're also, if you can tell, they're really narrow. And so for a minimalist shoe, which typically allows your toes to splay out like the Five Fingers do, or even like other minimalist shoes do that just give you a wider toe box, these are really narrow. And the other versions of Furoshikis are super minimal and really, really flexible, and so it doesn't really matter because it just stretches around your foot like a sock. These not quite so much. I've not found them to be uncomfortable because of how narrow they are, but it's a weird feeling when you're used to wearing other minimal shoes. And I'll tell you, the worst part about them is the heel. And it's a zero drop, just like you would expect, but the problem I found with the heel is on the inside. Let's see if I can get to it. On the inside, it's got like a hard, like a solid support behind your heel. And I find that rubs on the back kind of at my Achilles tendon, and is not terribly comfortable. After a while, it kind of bugs me, and I don't like how they feel. So I got these for pretty cheap, so I'm not upset about them, but not what I was hoping they would be. I'm still on the search for good minimal winter snowshoe boots, something that I don't have to worry every step I take that I'm going to get my feet wet, and I haven't found that yet. So I'm still working on it. But those are those Furoshikis. These are the neoprene version. My wife has some that are a little bit different that, they're a little more stylish for women. At least I feel like I wouldn't wear these other than just kind of being outside. But she likes hers, and they're warmer. They're a different material. But have more of a kind of an Ugg boot styling other than being minimal. Anyway, that's what I've got for winter Vibrams. Let me know in the comments how what your experience has been. What do you do in the winter? Maybe you have some other great shoes. I've looked at Zero Shoes and all those other brands, and haven't bought any, but I've kind of kept an eye on them. And if you have great ideas for how to keep your feet warm and dry in the winter, I would love to hear them, because that's a constant struggle here in the Midwest for those of us that like this minimal shoe stuff. But otherwise, if you have a chance, go get yourself some V-Trek Insulated. They're definitely my favorites that I've had so far. All right, that's it for today. We'll catch you next time.